Somebody else who has never shown any regard for workers, has never fought on behalf of social justice issues or making sure that poor kids are getting a decent shot at life or have health care, in fact, have worked against economic opportunity for workers and ordinary people. They don't suddenly become a populist because they say something controversial in order to win votes. That's nativism or xenophobia or worse, or it's just cynicism. I would just advise everybody to be careful about suddenly attributing to whoever pops up at a time of economic anxiety the label that they're populist.
I guess you can figure out who President Obama was talking about there, the Donald, of course. And a growing number of Republicans are also piling on. Politico points out that more and more rank-and-file Senate and House Republicans are fed up with the Donald. Utah Senator Mike Lee, he's one of them. Here he is during a phone interview.
We can get into that if you want. I mean, we can get into the fact that he accused my best friend's father of conspiring to kill JFK. We can go through the fact that he's made some statements that some have identified correctly as religiously intolerant. We can get into the fact that he's wildly unpopular in my state, in part because my state consists of people who are members of a religious minority church, people who were ordered exterminated by the governor of Missouri in 1838, and statements like that make them nervous. Now, look, these things are not something that I couldn't get over if I heard the right things out of him. But if you want to go to why it is I have concerns, I can go on if you'd like.
And I can go on with a lot of other Republicans who are growing more than a little uneasy with the Donald, from everybody from the Speaker of the House to the Senate Majority Leader and on and on. Well, let's bring in our panel. Richard Brodsky, former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos, professor at NYU, and also a man with problems with the Donald. Conservative strategist Bill O'Reilly. He also problems with the Donald, as we've chronicled on this program. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, who has no problems with anyone. He just goes along to get along. Okay. You know, there's some numbers to chew over here. And I think it's interesting. Both you guys have worked in the world of polls. You look at the national polls, they're a little bit all over the place. General consensus is he's probably down to Hillary by about 6 points, 6 or 7. It goes as high as 11 or as low as 2, but he's in there. But when you look at the swing states, and if we can show this, Nate Silver from 538, who picked last year every state right on how they'd break, and then the 4 years before that, 49 of the 50, he identifies the 6 key battleground states. Look at them, guys. I mean, in each of them, sometimes in overwhelming odds, she runs the table on these. There's no math for Trump that says he can do very well, if not needing to clear these, and become the next president. As we sit here with time to go, we're still before the convention, we're still all of those things, Bill, but the math and the map does not look good for him, and it doesn't seem that his party's rushing to rescue him.
It doesn't, and I trust Nate Silver's judgment on polling far more than mine. I mean, he's excellent. You got to agree. I mean, he's really excellent, and he's an analytical guy. You know, I saw after Trump's really terrible couple of weeks, I look at the battleground states, and Trump was only down 3, 4, and some of them within the margin of error. It's dropped since then, and I think it may drop a little bit more. But I'm surprised that he's actually this close in those states. I really am, because he's had a pretty rough time. Right now, he seems to be in limbo, trying to become a more professional organization. But when he's doing that, I don't know if it's just me, but he seems to be becoming boring suddenly. Like, is that possible? Like, you can only be in the news for so long.
The insane.
No, but I'm with you, Bill, 100%.
I don't care what he says anymore.
At least be entertaining to a lot of the folks who want change for change's sake. If Trump becomes a prompter guy, he may assuage some of the fears who people say, I can't stand Hillary, give me an alternative.
You want an entertaining idiot?
Well, if he's an idiot.
We did invite you on the show, Richard.
Yes. Oh, well played. Well played.
You know, you get enough monkeys and enough typewriters, they come up with one.
I want more doozies because I want that floor fight in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's why. You know, that's why.
The Mike Lee interview gave you a much better insight into the Republican problem than the conservative.
I know what you're going to say.
Listen to what he said. He said Trump came out for policies which Mormons who were victims of genocide would have problems with. Then he says, I can get over that if I hear the right things.
He did say that, didn't he?
What could you possibly say? What could Trump possibly say that would make genocide okay? Now, that's an extreme example of the problem that Republicans everywhere are going to have, whether they endorse him and get tagged with whatever insanity is out there, or they don't endorse him and have the Trump base, which is in the Republican Party, desert them entirely. I smell a landslide, as I said in the HuffPost, and I smell it in the House and in the Senate, and I smell it in ways that might deconstruct the Republican Party for more than one election.
Well, Andrew, the other thing that's telling to me is if we went back less than a month and we said, listen, you go through the polls and it's not just the top line number, you go through issue by issue. She does better than him, but there was 2 areas, important areas, where, at least in this election cycle, where he did better. The economy and creating jobs, and the other one was handling terrorism. Now, whether the people at this table think, you know, wait a minute, think about what he said and all the rest. Now, I don't think the general public has listened to the economists of nonpartisan and even Republican. I mean, look at Hank Paulson, what he said, and let alone progressive ones who say none of this adds up what he's saying. He talks about cutting the deficits and the debt here. This is going to skyrocket it, and you're going to put millions of Americans out of work if you do what he says. I'm not sure that's being consumed, but somehow, some way, the new polling has him underwater as it relates to her on both terrorism, protecting America, and also being the big job creator. I don't know what he's got left.
Although that, I just point out that's one poll, and it's a recent poll, and that is bucking the trend of the polls that we've seen that have shown him pretty consistently with a lead in those areas. And it's not, this is not going to be, if Trump's going to win this election, it's not going to be because of experts or because of people modeling his economic forecast and saying what the impact is going to be. It's going to be sort of knee-jerk gut reaction from a lot of voters, primarily in the industrial Midwest, who are disaffected by globalization and have lost their blue-collar jobs. And that's similar to what we saw in Great Britain with the Brexit vote. And there is a core of that runs from Pennsylvania and West Virginia through
Reagan
Ohio.
Democrats.
Yeah. I think it's a long shot for it to happen, but that's the risk I think that Hillary runs.
And by the way, also telling you, Nate Silver, who I'm giving a lot of love to here, he still pegged it at 79% she wins. So you do the puncher's chance here, he's still got a 1 in 5 shot to win.
Today.
Yeah,
today.
I mean, and 2 weeks ago, I thought he'd win, and I'll probably go back there again. I mean, it's the weirdest election where one day you think, how could he possibly win,
right,
and the next day you think, oh, he's going to sweep this thing.
But
it's an insane election.
Hillary Clinton has to figure out a way to address both of those areas of concern and actually sway people on it. How to assuage the concerns of those blue-collar workers, and how to make people, because there are going to be terror-related activities between now and Election Day, probably many of them. And so convincing voters that she's the better choice, the more sensible choice on that, when people's knee-jerk reaction, especially when there's instability on the global scene, is to go Republican, because Republicans are generally considered tougher on foreign policy.
Look at the trend lines, even on the things she's not ahead on. They are towards her, and the trend lines will continue. As I said a week ago, it's over. Now,
it's not over.
She's still liking a
You're
message.
channeling your dominance harder here. But yeah.
Lightning could strike. There's, you know, an 80% shot at winning an election.
But if Istanbul happens here,
lightning could strike.
No, I understand that, but you can't discount that
Here's the
possibility.
only,
she's got to reach out to those voters
and I agree
before
with
that
all of you guys
happens.
that the experts, so many of the things, the metrics that would guide previous elections, who's doing the endurance, I agree. In 2016, it doesn't matter nearly as much. I still think, though, that Americans put stock in guys with brass on their shoulders. I think, and I have no knowledge to back this up, inside information, but I believe you're going to see an outpouring of military folks, former Joint Chiefs of Staff under Republican and Democratic presidents, et cetera, to say, you cannot let this guy get the launch codes. I think it's going to be organized. I think it's going to come out. And I think the public says, they know more than I do about this stuff. Maybe they're right. You can't, you know, we've already heard that the Pentagon could have an insurrection here that they would never have support. Finally, Bill, before I lose time, we're hearing that Chris Christie has taken a pronounced role in the campaign. He's doing a lot of the vetting, and also he's considered by some here to be the prohibitive favorite to be the VP. I already seen the numbers. He's not going to carry New Jersey, Trump, no matter what, and I think it only hurts him with Christie. But do you think he helps him or hurts him as a tag team?
I think he hurts him. It's just two obnoxious guys.
Who helps him?
Who helps him? I don't think there's anybody available that helps him, to be honest with you.
You can't do that. You can't beat
Somebody with
nobody.
conservative bona
You
fides,
can't beat
think?
somebody with nobody. I mean, I think he's going to end up
His
with
best
Mary
choice
Feely
is
or somebing
Bob
from
Corker.
Oklahoma.
His best choice is Bob Corker.
If Corker's willing to do it. If Corker's
And
willing
he's
to do
even been critical of Trump.
it. Or
yeah.
Rick Perry, if Perry would do it.
Sessions was another name I heard. Interesting.
Perry,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
You
coming
wanna
up
get the
next,
average IQ
we
above
turn to closer to
75.
home. East Ramapo School District gets another year of state monitoring plus a few million in state aid, but will that fix what's broken here? Stay with us.